Hi everyone, it's Casey here, and I'm coming to you today to talk about how to build collective teacher efficacy in order to improve student learning. You can find the written version of this YouTube video on my blog, theliteracyeffect.com. So John Hattie kind of took the educational world by storm when he came out with his book, Visible Learning, where he introduced different instructional strategies and the impact they had on actual student learning. Through his research, he came up with that hinge point of 0.4, which is the average effect that would need to be used in order for that instructional strategy to be successful. So if you're like me, I want to know what's at the top of that list. And if you look at the top of the list with an effect size of 1.44, it is called Collective Teacher Efficacy. And so I dug into that a little bit more and I thought about what does that look like in the realm of the language arts world, the middle school world, and that's what I'm coming to you today to talk to you about. So collective teacher efficacy in a nutshell means as a team of teachers or teaching staff, we believe in each other. We believe that what we are collectively doing with one another is going to have a positive impact and effect on student learning. So just that belief, that confidence as a team, this is the top of the list. So how can we build that collective teacher efficacy in order to improve student learning? It's crazy that the top of the list is something that we do that's not necessarily right with students. It's what we're doing outside of what we do with students. So I came up with 5 different things of how we can improve that and build it. The first one is shared teacher collaboration to develop common lessons and assessments. So I'm part of a team of teachers and we co-plan our lessons together. We co-plan our summative and formative assessments together. And it is to the point where we feel like we need each other. When we're bouncing off a new idea, we need each other to make those decisions. And it should almost feel that way where your team is relying on each other to a part where you just feel like we're better together than we are by ourselves. Good teams talk about how you will use curriculum materials if they're already developed. So just because you have a curriculum material doesn't mean that every member on that team interprets that curriculum material in the same way, uses it the same way. Not saying you have to use it in the same way, just saying that talking about it, developing that common understanding of how something is used is a way to clarify that with one another. Additionally, can gain new ideas and perspectives from one another. And once again, just reiterating, not everyone has to teach the same way, but we should all be on that same page of how we're using things, why we're using things, developing those lessons, developing those common summative assessments, formative assessments, and just being on the same page with one another. Next up, we need opportunities to see each other teach in order to build collective teacher efficacy. Talking about something is very different than actually seeing that shared experience in action. We ask that question like, are we really on the same page? When we're talking to each other, we could convince each other that we are. But when we actually see that shared experience in action, we can debrief it together. This is where we really see if we are. When you go and you observe each other teach, really focus on students and focus on the effect that the teaching is having on students. Additionally, an idea would be if you have an instructional coach in your building, that person could be, I call it like the domino effect, where if that person goes into a teacher's classroom and say there's 3 teachers on the 6th grade language arts team, that instructional coach could go into the first teacher's classroom, that teacher could go to teacher B, and as the instructional coach takes over for teacher A. Teacher A comes back, the instructional coach leaves, goes and takes over for teacher B. Teacher B goes and sees teacher C teach. Teacher B comes back, instructional coach goes to teacher C, and teacher C goes and watches teacher A. Now, all of a sudden, we've seen the same lesson on the same day, can debrief it. Every teacher got to see another teacher teach one. So that's just one idea of how that could look. We could kind of figure that out in a lot of different ways. The next way to build collective teacher efficacy would be to look at student work together. So if you're taking that time to develop the common formative and summative assessments together, Take the time to look at them together afterwards. Test out your proficiency rubric. See how that proficiency rubric is going to actually work in action. Make sure that you are interpreting it the same way. Maybe there's something on the proficiency rubric that you need to switch. Maybe you look at a student work where a student's not getting it, and you can talk with each other of like, what steps, what could we have done differently? What supports can we put in place to help this student? Number 4 is focusing on professional staff relationships. And if you are on the blog post, I will also link it in the comments below. I have a free PDF available for you to download that really looks at some different questions, like at the beginning of the school year, throughout the school year, at the end of the school year. What are some questions that we can be asking in our teams to foster those professional relationships, to make sure that our teams are functioning in the way that we need them to function? So make sure you grab it in the link below and just use it to have those open conversations and give you a place to start, a launching point to have the conversations that are needed. And then the last one is just have a process for idea sharing. I think a lot of times the same people within a team are the ones that are maybe have the loudest voices, or they're the ones that in order to process ideas just bounce so many ideas off of the other teammates, and not necessarily everyone gets a voice at the table. I would recommend having this process for idea sharing. One way that you could do it is, first you need to identify when your team is making a decision. Are you trying to decide new books for your upcoming reading unit? Are you trying to decide how to format your next summative assessment? Identify places where we are making a decision right now. We are generating ideas together right now. And then in that moment, you need to make sure you're having a process where all voices around the table can be heard. And it sounds a little bit silly, but I think using a timer is very beneficial. Maybe give every person 30 seconds to share their idea, and then go around again. And maybe people have changed their minds after hearing others' ideas, but it gives everyone a balanced playing field and a place where they feel like their voice is heard before important decisions for the team are made and certain people dominate while other people hold back. And it just gives that balance. So those are the 5 ways that I brainstormed that you can develop teacher efficacy in order to impact the student learners in your class. If you have other ideas, or if you really like something or want to chat more about it, please leave me a comment in the comments below. And thank you so much for tuning in.